All right. Hi, I'm Jordan Levers, and this is our artist group. Basically, we were an asset for both teams, and we just kind of freelance between both teams. And everybody worked on a little bit of everything, honestly. We have Jerome Lewis, Eric Mills, Quinn Spradling, Thomas Guillory, and Vivek Chowdhury. And I think we'll start off with Eric.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to walk you through from concept art through to modeling, texturing, UV layouts, and rigging a little bit. I'm just going to show it in order of the way it goes. So this is the concept art. This was actually drawn by Devin, who you met earlier there. And that's what I worked from to make the warrior. To do this, it's almost like tracing in 3D. I put up a picture reference plane in Maya, and then I modeled on top of that. So next slide. So as you can see, it's almost exactly like the drawing. This is just the model with no textures. Next slide. All right, this shows the wireframe and the rig. And it's really low poly, which wasn't difficult for me. I usually do that anyways, and then I up the polygons later as I need them. So it didn't change too much in my process to do that. And next slide. This is showing the rig in a pose. So you can see that the rig affects all of his models. It's a lot of separate models for this one. This is a UV layout right here. This is the head. Basically, what you have to do is unwrap the model so that whoever's going to be texturing it can paint directly on top of it in Photoshop or whatever program they're using. Next. That's showing the painting on top of it. This is another one. This is another example. This is a shoulder pad. Next. And that's it painted out. Torso. And that's all of it together. This is the same thing again, but this is the other character that I made. This one is painted by Jordan. I worked from this reference. Next. There's a model. Same process, so same thing. And he'll talk to you later about how he went about painting these and dealing with the UV layouts. All right. Nice showing. All right, this is a model I made that's not a character. It's a gun. It's a flintlock. We needed some futuristic, like old school type weapons for the Gladiator game, so I made a flintlock with like a heat sink. So that's what I made there, and it's a different angle. And then, all right. This is it painted up on CVs, and then together, it looks like that. Came out really nice. And that's the sword I made for the warrior. Next up is Jordan, which, like Eric said, this is a UV painting. So after I actually modeled this crossbow. And after that point, as you said, you have to basically unfold your 3D model into something you can actually paint on. And so this is the crossbow fully painted. And that's what it looks like in 3D. And this is the texture for grays, which were unable to be implemented due to technical exporting reasons. I think we ended up using just pictures referencing real rock surfaces from around campus. But this just gives you an idea of how the UV mapping works. And that's what they look like in 3D. This is crypt stairs. And another, this is all from the crypt and the 3D model for the crypt. And the interior, which is painted on. All the textures are there. And without textures. And another view. And now I'll hand it over to Thomas.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I'll take a step back. I modeled this crypt in the underground coffin area, basically going off the idea that the game Immortals as a spawn point. So what I was thinking of at the beginning was whenever the character selects who they want to play as, whether it's the warrior, the mage, or the rogue, you'd have 3 altars set in front of 3 coffins. And when you would select your character, the coffin door would open up and the character would walk out. And there was also another way that we built portraits on top of the altar, and we built specific items. Like for the mage, we've had this blue ball that's glowing and it's supposed to be magical, and then in front of the road, this poison vial, and in front of the warrior, this really crazy looking helmet, and they had a portrait on top to where you'd be able to select it and come out. I just use basic references. I mean, this looks like your typical mausoleum, something that you'd see in like Diablo. Continue on. This character model was one that I did for the Gladiator game. It is heavily influenced by Dead Space. They wanted to do a futuristic Gladiator game, and so I was starting to think about the old gladiators back in Roman times, and most of them were slaves, so they didn't wear extravagant armor. They didn't wear really intricate stuff. But to make it futuristic, I couldn't put them in just like a metal sleeve. So I thought, what game did it better than Dead Space, which was futuristic miners in space? I mean, obviously I think you can see a lot of influence from that. We just had spikes because spikes are cool. This was the original helmet that I came up with, but the geometry was so crazy on it that painting it was literally impossible. So we simplified it.
Okay. This is the resource drill tower from the Gladiator game, which I had modeled and textured. And that is one of Jerome's shirts, which I'll let him talk about.
Yes, this is one of the terms that I created. Well, I only created one. But I think it was used in the game, but it wasn't movable at the time, being that it was having trouble, but I'm not sure. But this is just one, like, kind of 3/4 view of it. And this also is one of the street lamps that was used in the Immortal game. And it's like, and also they asked for a different weapon, like a futuristic weapon used for the Gladiator game, but it just wasn't used. But I just thought it was cool to have a double barrel shotgun with a Tommy gun clip on it. This is texture created by Jordan for a futuristic tower, which was used in Gladiator games. They ran in a couple of issues. One that was being that I wasn't too sure how the modeling goes into UDK, so they had to go back and fix a few issues. But this would be like one of the looks of it in inside view, and some of the stationary turrets that was used also. There's Gwen.
Okay, what I have here is a couple pieces of early concept art, just to show the difference between the difference between the early stuff and what ended up getting used in the final version. This art was developed for the Immortal game. This is supposed to be the warrior. When I had read the game information, I wasn't quite sure whether he should be skeletal or more zombified, so I took the more zombified approach with this one. As you can see, there's a big difference between what he looks like here and what he looks like in game. This one is the concept art for the Lich. The game information that we were provided with at the beginning of the semester described him as shadowy, mysterious. You could see his face, so I took I decided to depict him as cloaked and creepy and secretive. So.
One more thing. Also, before with the tombstones, I created the tombstones in Jordan, like did the textures. And another thing, I didn't know about the concave parts. I just thought it was cool to add that. Because they couldn't use it.
I'd like to just note that as artists, whenever we're just usually in a setting of animating for not a user interface, but just a video, which you would just see, there's literally thousands of ways you could go about doing this. Whereas when you need something to work with, all of this computer programming, which we know almost nothing about, honestly, there's very specific ways that you have to work. And that, just became a work in progress with communicating with our computer science majors and, between just kind of figuring out what we needed to do on our end and what they needed to do so they could work together. And that's some of the reason that we may have certain things that weren't implemented, and if we couldn't maybe figure out how we were supposed to create them, or if they exported them properly, we worked through some of these issues and actually got a lot of it done towards the end. We figured out a lot of those problems, but there's still a few that we never implemented yet. So I think Thomas actually you have your video?
Yeah, there's video as well.
We're gonna, because y'all didn't get to really see like the turrets in action that well, we did a couple like 10-second little shorts of the animation of the turrets. And you'll be able to watch. So
it's an old computer.
That was a good.
that's time. All right. Well, I guess
So just open it. You can reopen. Just open it using Windows Media Player.
Sorry.
No, that's
If you click OK, you might close it.
It's a one of them.
Yes.
I'm completely computer illiterate. I have a friend that takes care of everything. He's the other one.
So you created these models by hand?
Since that?
You created the models by hand? You built them yourself?
Yes.
On that scanner?
We get cardboard boxes and spray paint.
It's actually steel.
Military grade. Fair enough. I'm Thomas. I did the concept and the model and texturing for the road in the Immortals game. This is just kind of it's lagging. Good stuff. Oh yeah. There it is. I made a model in Maya and then painted the texture directly on it. I did the automatic UV map through Maya and sent it into Mudbox, which is another Autodesk product, and was able to paint directly on her in real time. So the texture map is insane. It's not nearly as neat as the one that Jordan and Eric cooked up for their characters. But I was able to do it like in a very quick way with this, which kind of works for my workflow. And she ended up looking pretty good. Also made the staff and the crossbow, the staff that the mage used. Vivek had the idea for how it would look. Wanted it to be like a severed hand claw that the mage Lich had taken from one of his fallen enemies. Kind of kept it as a token and bestowed magical powers onto it. So that's his staff. I did the same process, modeled it in mine and sent it to Mudbox. Crossbow which was originally for the rogue, but it ended up getting used in the Gladiator game, which it worked out well there. A lot of influence from like World of Warcraft and RuneScape, sadly, but way back in the day. For the Gladiator game, the original concept was going to be like peasant gladiators fighting for their freedom, and I kind of made the concept for the Gladiator, but it looked a little too old-fashioned, and instead of being like a future space-type gladiator, it looked more like a Roman gladiator. So it kind of mainstreamed it up and took ideas from Dead Space, Mass Effect, Halo, Iron Man. They're kind of mech look for the futuristic. This is one of the gladiators that we didn't get put in the game yet. He was the first one that I did. You can tell his head is very Iron Man. His body is very in 7, and did the same thing with him texture-wise, painted directly onto the model. Let's see, the female gladiator, Lafayette modeled, and I'll let him talk about it. Oh yeah, well, he modeled it, but due to time constraints, he sent it to me to texture, and it worked so that everything kind of had the same art style with the texture for the game. So I did her the same way that I did the others, just threw her in a mud box and painted directly on top of her. And giggled for that. And then the final gladiator that I did was one that just recently got in the game, is the black and red one. He was kind of my pride and joy of the semester. I used a lot of influences from the first scrapped gladiator I did, and then some of the Master Chief and Mass Effect type art design for him. That's his texture map. Yeah, I mean, I didn't have to texture on that map, so painting it on the model itself in real time was a lot easier than actually trying to find each of these UV points and paint it in Photoshop. But that was my process and the models that I made for this. Yeah, I also rigged them, and my rigs were not the greatest.
So basically, that's it for our artists. One thing that I really wanted to say is that for us, this was a really interesting experience, because usually whenever we actually animating, we have to do lighting, modeling, texturing, just all of it, particles, everything, you know, and a lot of times it's us alone, right? And so this was nice because we actually got to work, I guess, in a little bit more of an industry standard kind of way, where we could actually, you know, distribute the tasks amongst ourselves. And actually, I guess for a lot of the particle stuff, you had Devin working on things like that in UVK. And really just the entire experience, aside from that, from the ease in which we could, you know, distribute tasks, is just, I really thought that working with, you know, people that were programmers, not necessarily artists, it was a very interesting and industry-like way of working. You know, we actually have to communicate with people who aren't of the same breed, or whatever you want to call it, and, you know, they have to do the same. So we have to come to an understanding, which is, you know, not always the easiest to do, because you're just going, well, why can't your programming do this, or why can't your art do this? And you have to come to some sort of an understanding between those two. But it's really cool when it actually works out, and I feel like we got a lot of those things accomplished to my satisfaction. I think I speak for everyone when I say that. So that is it for the artists.